Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. I want to do something a little different today, and I'm going to talk about something that I collect but I rarely talk about it. Back in the day, one way to get your information about video games was magazines. There was no internet, so you pretty much only got your information from things like Nintendo Power or EGM or GamePro magazines. And that's what I want to talk about on today's episode. So roll that intro. Before I get into the magazine that I want to talk about today, I kind of want to talk about retro video game magazines in general. It's kind of a new series I want to do on the channel where I just review an old retro video game magazine. There won't be any particular order, just certain issues that I liked looking at back in the day that has cool information in them. You know, these old video games are almost a snapshot in time. And it really takes you back and lets you see how video games were in general at the time. Just different things and issues that I'd like to talk about. So for the first episode, I guess I'll call it Retro Mag Read-Through, or something of that nature. It's nothing fancy, but you know, I really like looking at these, and I thought, hey, maybe you guys might want to come on the journey with me. So today, I want to go over Electronic Gaming Monthly, issue number 6. December 1989 issue, with Batman on the cover. Look at that. Well, let's get into the read-through. As soon as you see this cover, you know it's going to be legit. Batman for the NES. So looking at this magazine, you can see that this was the January 1990 issue. It would have been on newsstands in early to mid-December 1989. On the front, the cover story. Batman. Now this is the NES game, based on the Michael Keaton Batman movie that came out in 1989. By this time, the TurboGrafx and the Sega Genesis were out for about 5 months already. So you will see coverages of those games for those systems in this magazine also. On page 8, you get to a section called Interface, where readers of the magazine can write in and ask any questions that they want. This is what people did back in the day before email and internet were a thing. They actually mailed letters by hand. Anyways, not too many letters this month are interesting, but one that stuck out is this one from Eric Ditmore, who proudly says EGM is the best magazine out there, and asks for some more screenshots of Phantasy Star 2. Plus, he wants a magazine dedicated to the Sega Genesis only, which ironically was included in this very issue. Pretty cool. On page 10, you get to one of my favorite sections in the magazine, the Review Crew section. This is where 4 different people review a game and give it a rating from 1 to 10. This month, they review games like Rolling Thunder, which Ed scored pretty well. Ed gave it a 7 by saying it was very fun and had good gameplay, but also a difficult game. He liked that it had a password system also. Page 12, they review DuckTales for the NES, which gets 2 8s, a 9, and a 7. Martin says, don't be fooled by the kiddie graphics. This game is a prime example of very good game design. He's definitely not wrong about that one. On page 17, we get an ad for a game that would go on to be a classic for the NES, River City Ransom. I remember playing this with my uncle back in the day. It was awesome. It was like Double Dragon, but with RPG elements. So get ready, Street Thugs, because we're coming to mess you up. Page 20 is a section called Gaming Gossip, which is basically a bunch of rumors that may or may not have been true back in the day in the video game industry. Some of the rumors this month were Sunsoft supposedly bringing some heavy hitters to the table, including Gremlins 2, just in time for the sequel. And also a rumor about some Nintendo games receiving a price cut down to $19.99, which I would have loved to hear about if I was a parent back in the day. Then on page 35, there's a section called Mega Play, which is basically and a huge advertisement for the upcoming Genesis games.
Games like Super Hang-On, Phantasy Star 2, Golden Axe, Ghouls and Ghosts, Shinobi, and Mystic Defender.
And then on page 46, one of my favorite games for the Sega Genesis, Forgotten Worlds. Me and my uncle used to play this all the time back in the day. Just look at these screenshots.
It even shows screenshots for the first 3 levels of the game. And check out all the power-ups that you can get. I always love looking at these pictures. Check out these 2 badass main characters. Me and my uncle loved playing games like this. Just super macho type guys that were this there to kick everybody's ass. It even shows one of the cool looking bosses in the game. Check that dude out.
And then you get to one of my favorite sections in the book, Tricks of the Trade. This is where they would show you all the secret codes for your favorite games. One of the first codes you see is for bad dudes, the 63 men trick. Defeat the bad guys with this super power up. On controller 2, press B, A, down, up. Next, press start on controller 1, and you will begin with a whopping 63 free men. Now anyone can beat the game. Yeah, I'd say so. That's a hell of a trick. The next one is for RoboCop. Special continue. Normally, you have limit continues, but with this trick, you can keep on playing after your last restart. When RoboCop dies, press the A and B button and select buttons, and then press start to return to the title screen where the continue option can be used. Again, well, that's pretty helpful. That game's pretty tough, actually. And here's one for Ghouls and Ghosts. Imagine that. This game is brutal. Check it out. It's a level select. During the title screen, wait for the words Ghouls and Ghosts to float down the screen. Press up, down, left, right, and you should hear a short musical melody that sounds like a harp. Now, depending on which of the inputs you enter below, you will start on one of the game levels. That's pretty neat. And look at the last boss in the game right there. Isn't that wild that they just showed that in a screenshot? Here's a cool code for Super Hang-On. To max out your money with the raddest mechanic and sponsors prior to the last race, enter this code and let the good times roll. Now, you're up against the vicious road warrior, King Arthur, for a final showdown in the ride of your life. That's pretty cool. And look at this one for Tengen Tetris. Check this one out. The level select piece removal. To initiate the level select in Tengen's excellent version of Tetris, you must first press start to pause the game, and then press up, down, left, right, BB, and then press the A button to choose any level of play up to 17. We've all played Tetris and made a mistake that proved to be costly, and the second trick lets you correct your errors before they cost you the game. Just imagine that. Playing Tetris, people take Tetris super seriously. And this code lets you eliminate a piece that you accidentally put in the wrong spot. I see a lot of NES players who like the original Nintendo version of Tetris way better than this because of this reason specifically. They get super heated when people say they did really well on the Tengen versions of Tetris, because technically it's an easier game with this trick being utilized. And check this one out. There's a couple Game Boy codes too for Super Mario Land. To continue the game in Super Mario Land is identical to the one in Super Mario Bros. For the NES. Simply hold down the A button before pressing start. To select any level of play in Super Mario Land, you must first beat the game and rescue the princess twice. A screen selector will appear next to the start prompt to let you know it worked. Check this code out for Tetris. It's like an early version of hacking. When playing the Type B game on level 9, there's a way to end the game with one line left and mess up the screen. Wait until you only have one line left to fill. At the very moment that you drop a block to fill the last line and win the game, hit start to bring up the pause screen. The ending will appear over it and it will look very weird. And it shows a screenshot. I don't think that's a code. I think you just glitched the game. And check it out. Here's a code for Fax Xanadu. To advance to the last board before the ending of the game with plenty of power-up enhancements and other items, try using this special code. And check it out, the 3 codes that are all right beside each other in this magazine were all submitted by Cindy and Tim Taylor from Spokane, Washington. What a cool thing. It's like you and your girlfriend or you and your wife just sat around and played Nintendo games all the time. Man, where are those women at these days? After the tricks of the trade, you see an advertisement that just says Child's Play and shows a joystick. Kind of looks like an old Atari controller. But then, the next page, oh yeah, the Power Glove. Man, it's so bad. Then you get an advertisement for Game Mania. It's basically a company that sells Nintendo games because like I said, Nintendo games were hard to get in the stores, so you'd almost have to order them over the phone and they would send them to you. But check out some of these prices for some of these games. Fester's Quest for $44.99? Sheesh, I'd be upset if I paid $45 for Fester's Quest. And look at this, Shooting Range for $39.99? Man, where do they get their prices at? But there are a couple good ones on here. Check out Adventure Island for $39.99. It's a pretty decent game. And I'm not a big fan of the unlicensed games for the NES, but here's a couple of them that were made by Tengen, like Rolling Thunder for $44.99 and Gauntlet for $39.99. But check this out. Police Academy the video game? For $39.99? What? Police Academy? I never remember that coming out for the NES. And check it out. The cover story, Batman for $49.99. From the dark streets of Gotham City to the deepest corners of the criminal underworld, the Caped Crusader is back like you've never seen him before. He's armed with acrobatic strength and cunning defenses, rivaled only by his will to succeed on his search and destroy mission to end the Joker's reign of terror. And one more, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, $44.99. Yikes. Talk about buying a game and literally not being able to get past the first level. Talk about frustrating. And then on the next page, it actually has the order form and a couple more cool things that you can buy. And the double wireless remotes. Just think about that. Wireless remotes in the early 90s? Man, I never would have thought. That would have blew my mind. Then you see an ad for an NES controller with a stereo jack input on it. It's basically a headphone jack to where you could play your NES games in silence so you wouldn't bother your parents. Like in this photo right here. They're just sitting there enjoying their book and you're in there gaming away. And they're not hearing you yell or the game going crazy, making all those video game sounds. This controller's pretty hard to find these days. And it fetches a decent price on eBay, unfortunately. Because that's a pretty cool idea if you ask me. And it's made by Hudson Soft, so you know it's a badass controller. And finally, on page 65, we get to the cover story, Batman for the NES. Manufactured by Sunsoft, it says. 2 meg cartridge, 5 levels, and the difficulty is hard. Available March 1990. The Dark Knight wages war on the Joker in Batman the video game. Man, just look at this. This thing was synonymous with the Nintendo. One of the best games for the system, honestly. Great soundtrack. Man, and it talks all about it in here. All these screenshots used to blow me away when I was a kid. I could just read them and look at the pictures over and over. And actually, the graphics looked really good. The Joker looked just like him. Batman looked great, and it shows all 5 levels. Can Batman stop the Joker? And then one really cool thing I liked about this magazine is they would show the entire layout of the level, just in case you didn't know what to do. After the cover story, we get to a section called Turbo Champ. When I was younger, I didn't know very much about this, but this was the TurboGrafx 16, or what it was known in Japan as the PC Engine, and it was actually out at the time. But just check out some of the games that were on this system. This was crazy that this was actually an 8-bit system, even though it says TurboGrafx 16. Towards the end of the book, you used to get these ads way back then that would have Nintendo products that you could actually buy if you called the number and they would ship them to you. It's so weird to think about that nowadays. Because Nintendo products were so hard to find on the shelves, you could actually order them through the mail and they would send them to you. Things like the Zapper, the NES Advantage, and even the Nintendo Entertainment System itself. It's so cool. But just think how revolutionary that was. That you would call a number, give them your address, and I guess you'd pay by credit card over the phone, and they would send these things to you. And also, right here, it talks about new Atari Lynx model on the way. The Atari Lynx was a handheld system. And then, on one of the last pages in the magazine, you get an advertisement for High Glide. I remember watching the Angry Video Game Nerd's review of this game, and man, he really tore it apart. On page 80, it's the top score club. I always like this page because it just seems like these people play these games non-stop to acquire these insanely high scores. Let's just look at a couple of these. Alter Beast for the Genesis. Jeffrey Erickson scored 1,109,700. But some of these just don't seem obtainable. And if you look at some of the names on the list, you actually see the same name twice, maybe even 3 times. Man, these guys put some time in on these games. Back in the day, it was a huge honor to get a high score, because in the arcades, it was all about bragging rights. And if you look at the bottom, there's actually a thing called the National Video Game Team, which I guess was a team full of awesome video game players. Isn't that crazy? Just think about that. They actually had a team dedicated to people that was good at video games. And then on the inside of the back cover, you get an advertisement for POW, Prisoners of War.
POW is a pretty awesome side-scrolling beat-em-up for the Nintendo. It's really fun, but the only bad thing about it is that it's not co-op like the arcade was. If this game would have been co-op, it seriously would have been one of the best beat-em-ups on the platform. Plus, the lack of the third button makes it to where you have to jump kick by pressing both A and B at the same time. I don't know, it's kind of tedious. But it is a solid game, and one of my favorites to play if I just want to get a quick fix on some side-scrolling action.
And then at the end of the magazine, you get one last advertisement that talks about all the new games coming out made by Tecmo. Games like Tecmo World Wrestling, Baseball, Ninja Gaiden, and Tecmo Bowl. Well, that's Electronic Gaming Monthly, issue 6 read-through. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. And, you know, I love looking at these old things and just kind of reminiscing on how things used to be back then. And having all the tips and tricks right at your fingertips, you know? To me, it's just cooler to grab one of these magazines and kind of flip through them rather than just get on your computer and look up a code or something. It's always cool to just take a trip down memory lane with these things because, I don't know, for a time, this is the only thing you had to get your information. So I really enjoy looking at them. If you have any memories of old video game magazines, leave them in the comment section below. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And until next time, keep it retro.